Good day, everyone. My name is Attorney Anthony Reeves, and this is your Q&A Social Security Disability Today. I am your host, Attorney Anthony Reeves, so let's get to your questions. What happens after a continuing disability review? Okay. If you find yourself in a situation where you're going to be undergoing a review, whether you got a short form, long form, any type of things like that, most people want to know, well, what happens next? Really, there's two paths that happen. The path that keeps your benefits going and the path that stops your benefits. Well, let's talk about the easier path, the path that keeps your benefits going. What happens is Social Security looks at two benchmarks, how you're doing now and how you're doing the last time they determined you were disabled. So if it was a year ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago, that the last time they did a review of your case to see if you were disabled, that's going to be the two benchmarks they look at. So they're going to want to know whether or not you have improved since that time. And more importantly, have you medically improved enough to be able to return back into the workforce? Okay. And if you're a child, it's kind of to see if you're medically improved to where you're no longer meeting the children's standard. All right. So they get all your medical records, they send out a variety of different forms, and what usually happens is that if they determine that you are still either in bad shape, because your condition hasn't improved, your benefits continue, they're not disrupted, you keep right on going. That's the first part, that's the easiest part. Now let's get to the more tricky part. What happens if they determine that you're no longer disabled? Well, what usually happens is that you'll get a notice in the mail indicating that we've done a review of your case and we've determined that you've medically improved. They'll give you a date, letting you know when they believe your improvement occurred, and then they will tell you when your benefits will cease. Okay. Typically, if you're getting benefits and you want to fight this, they give you 10 days. They'll tell you, we'll give you 10 days to continue your benefits. That means within 10 days of that decision, you have to notify them if you want to keep your benefits going while you're fighting the process. Now, here's one thing that I tell people all over the time. They should know this because Social Security does tell you. When you keep your benefits going while you're fighting the process, you're rolling the dice that you believe you can prove you're still disabled. If by some chance you are unsuccessful in proving you are still disabled, for every dollar after that date that they determine that you are no longer disabled, you'll have to reimburse them that money. Just go ahead and put that elephant in the room, put it right out there. So then what happens next? Well, after that, when they're going to tell you you're no longer disabled, they're going to give you the right to appeal it. So if you appeal it, in most instances, you have the opportunity to go before a disability hearing officer, which is an officer at the DDS level, the Disability Determination Services level. Every state is a little different, but this is historically how it runs, where you'll have the opportunity to provide additional medical evidence and provide provide arguments. I hate to say legal arguments, but provide arguments before a hearing officer as to why you believe you are still disabled. This actually happens fairly quickly, meaning they have a very big booklet that they go through. They'll ask you a variety of questions, very informal. You could probably be sitting in a room just talking to that employee. Then they make the determination, usually within about a month. They move very fast. And if they determine that they got it wrong, your benefits keep going. If they determine they got it right, usually your next recourse is you have to go before an administrative law judge. And same thing applies. Just like you went before a judge before, if you did, and if you didn't, you're going before a judge to prove that Social Security was wrong and that you are still disabled. During that window, it's the same amount of time from the time that you lost your hearing with the disability hearing officer to when you go before a judge. May take up to a year or longer. It depends entirely on your jurisdiction. Now, during that time period, I tell people keep going to the doctors. I tell people also to make sure your file is updated so that when the judge gets there and is reviewing your file, she or he can determine whether or not the evidence supports your claim that you are still disabled. Now, the magic question most people ask is, at what point do I have to pay the money back if you get denied by a judge? That's usually the magical linchpin time period. That once that judge has denied you, you're probably going to get some kind of funky notice talking about, well, we want our money back. That's usually. So for those of you who are worried and so forth about what's going to happen going forward. These are a few things you need to be aware of. If you're going to keep your benefits going, be advised you may have to pay them back if you lose. Make sure your file is updated going forward, and that keep in mind you bear the burden of proving that you are still disabled. The government has reason to believe that you have improved. They usually are looking at something in particular. You've got to provide evidence to demonstrate to the contrary, or you will lose your benefits. Okay? All right. Thanks for tuning in for another edition. Come back here in a few seconds and we will talk about what's going to happen in our next episode. Would you like to hang out with me and get your Social Security disability questions answered live? Please feel free to send an email to legalgold@zoho.com and put Hangout in the subject line. Make sure you indicate what day and time is good for you to schedule a Google Hangout. Again, send an email to legalgold@zoho.com. Let's hang out and get those disability questions answered. On our next edition of Q&A Social Security Disability Today, we're going to talk about garnishment of your Social Security based on unpaid student loans. For those of you who have those, you might want to tune in because this may be helpful to you. Again, my name is Attorney Reeves, and this is your Q&A Social Security Disability Today.